Hello again. The government set up Prevent, which is supposed to identify potential terrorists after the 9/11 attacks in 2001. The aim was to stop Al Qaeda from recruiting people in Britain and thus to prevent terrorist attacks. Somewhere along the line, it was noticed that Prevent was focusing its efforts on Muslims, and this looked to some people like a flagrant case of Islamophobia. In fact, of course, the focus was on Muslims because they were the ones setting off bombs and killing people during the knife rampages. In the last 20 years, Islamist terrorists have killed 96 people in this country. Right-wing extremists have been responsible for 2 or 3 deaths. Apart from the murder of MP Joe Cox, there was a mad Ukrainian who stabbed to death a Muslim in the Midlands. And then there was somebody who drove his van at worshippers leaving Finsbury Park Mosque in London. In short, Muslim terrorists have killed 33 times as many people as right-wing extremists. And yet last year, the Prevent programme dealt with more right-wing extremists than it did Muslims. This is one of the reasons an independent review of Prevent was launched a couple of years ago and is about to be published. It's been headed by a former head of the Charity Commission called William Shawcross, and it is very damning. For one thing, it seems that a conscious decision was made at some point to lay off Muslims and concentrate on white people with right-wing views. This is so that Muslims do not accuse Prevent of Islamophobia. It has led to a number of court cases where teenage boys have ended up in court charged with having material useful in the preparation of acts of terrorism. The material proves invariably to be books and stuff downloaded from the internet. These youngsters have been referred in the main by teachers who have become concerned because they've been seen watching YouTube channels which have right-wing views. Teachers tend to be far more worried about right-wing people than they do about Muslim extremists. As part of the same strategy, those running Prevent have been cozying up to Muslim organisations and handing them large sums of money. Your money, that is, from your taxes, so that these groups can help deter young Muslims from becoming terrorists. Inevitably, some of these organisations are themselves run by Islamists, and some of them have connections with the Taliban in Afghanistan, and in one case were producing material which was aimed at telling Muslims in the British Army to disobey orders. This is what used to be called sedition at one time, and people were once arrested for it. These days they're given handouts from the government. It is this kind of thing which has been delaying the publication of the Shawcross inquiry, because it's feared that if these Islamists are named, then it might be possible for them to take legal action. The people in this country who are actually fighting terrorism all focus their attention on Muslim extremists for obvious reasons. The police and MI5 know that these are the only people who are likely to plant bombs or go on killing sprees. Prevent alone is directing most of its efforts at finding young right-wingers and seeing if they can be hauled into court, which is pretty mad. Of course, the fact that terrorists in this country are almost without exception Muslim tells us nothing useful about Islam itself. It doesn't mean that all Muslims are terrorists. That's a very different proposition from accepting that most terrorists are Muslim. In the 1970s and 1980s, almost all terrorists in this country were Irish. But in the same way, this told us nothing about Irish people as such, merely that terrorism in Britain at that time was being carried out chiefly by Irish people. The report on Prevent is going to reveal some shocking facts about what this government-funded body has been up to. I don't suppose that many of us will be surprised to learn that this present government has got its priorities a bit mixed up. Indeed, it's just exactly what I would have expected. Luckily, the security services themselves are still independent enough to put their efforts into the real danger, which is from Islamism. But I suppose that they too are under pressure to switch their attention instead to nationalists and those who are perceived as right-wing extremists.